Good morning, students. Today we're going to look at the Dupont method of return on assets. So we're still in the ratio analysis portion of our study, which will be on test 2. Let's go to Wolf Den and take a look at what's under test 2. Okay, I put a study guide down at the bottom. If you scroll down to the bottom, I also emailed it to you yesterday, but there is a study guide at the bottom of your test 2 information, so pull that up. Everything that you see posted here will be on test 2, so you need to go through and remember how to do the problems. Today we want to look at the Dupont formula PowerPoints. We want to look at this Dupont depreciation problem. I may get into depreciation a little bit next week on Monday. So let's pull that up. Your test is on Friday. Also, you need the Bartlett financials there. So Bartlett financial statements to get some information, the Dupont problem, and the Dupont formula. Okay, so let's pull all of that up. And I have my Bartlett financials down here, so I won't bother to pull that one up. But let's take a look. Okay, this is the handout. We're going to work the top portion. The bottom portion will be your homework. You do not have to do the portion on depreciation. Okay, now on the bottom portion for your homework, let me just tell you now, you need to have, the calculations need to be complete for all 4 of these parks. We're going to be comparing them, and when you get into it, actually you will have 12 ratios here, so you need to make sure it's complete. You do not have to do the depreciation today. Okay, so the second page is not for today. Okay, we will work with the top portion, everything above homework, and I will give you the information as to how to calculate the Dupont formula. Okay, now let me go back and pull up the PowerPoints. For some reason they did not come up, so give me just a minute. Let me get those pulled up. Here they are. They're very brief, not very long today, so we want to review those. And it'll give us all the information that we need. This actually comes from another book, so don't pay attention to the chapter 3 portion. Okay, but we want to look at this formula. Now, return on assets is a formula that you've already learned. Okay, the actual formula for return on assets is your net income divided by your total assets, and that was one that we calculated. However, in this information, if we go through and take a look, we have a breakdown here. We've broken it down into 2 portions, and this is referred to as the Dupont formula. Okay, the first portion is the profit margin, and you'll recognize this. We calculate one of those with Apple, net income divided by sales, and then the other one is the asset turnover, which is sales divided by your total assets, actually total assets here. Okay, now profit margin measures profitability, asset turnover measures efficiency. Okay, now what's the need then to have 2 calculations when we really have a formula to get the return on assets, which is also called the return on investments? Well, let me give you a little background in the second slide. The DuPont company is still on the Dow Industrial Average. It's one of the top 30 stocks. It's been around for a very long time. You're probably familiar with it with Teflon, and they're also in the chemical business. So DuPont is a very prestigious, solid company that was started back in the 1800s. Well, this gentleman named Donaldson Brown was actually their management accountant, and they were evaluating different divisions within their company. And you know, when you do evaluations, you're focusing on the managers and how well the managers are doing. So most of the time you're going to measure them on how profitable they are, how well you know, the asset turnover, and just in general the assets that they use, how well are they bringing in a profit on the assets that are within their division. So instead of having one calculation, which we normally do, which is your net income divided by your total assets. That's your return on asset measure. He decided to break it down so that you could evaluate these managers based on two measures, which would be your profitability and your asset turnover. So it was because of this gentleman, Donaldson Brown, who was an accountant, managerial accountant in the company, that we have this measure. Okay. Now, what we want to do here is to take a look. The profit margin and the asset turnover, I've already told you, are the two calculations that we're going to do. One measures profitability, one measures efficiency, and the combined total there is going to give us our return on assets, which is going to be our net income. So this measure here, return on assets, is net income divided by total assets. Because if you notice here, the profitability ratio, you can eliminate sales. You can eliminate sales in the numerator here. Your remaining ratio would be net income divided by total assets, which is what your return on assets is. So this is the profit margin. This is your asset turnover. And using these two calculations, you can come up with a longer version of return on assets that's used in evaluating managers within divisions. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the problem. And the answers are also on the PowerPoint. So go to your problem handout. And the top portion that we want to do here, I've given you the calculations again, but we want to go to Bartlett's financial statement. And we want to use this long formula to calculate our return on assets. So let's go to Bartlett. The first thing we want to do is to get our profit margin. Now, our profit margin is this measure. Income to common stockholders, which is your net income minus your preferred dividends. Okay, so let's find that measure, and then we want to divide that by sales. That gives you your profit margin. So coming down here, look on your income statement. Okay, we want to look for 2012. Come on down, and we want the bottom line here. Now, if we did not have any dividends, the number we would use would be the one before that. That would be net income. But since we do have dividends to preferred stockholders, we want this bottom number. Okay, so 221 is going to be your first number that you're going to use here. So 221. And we want to divide that by your sales. So come up here. 3074 is going to be the number you divide that by. Okay, now that particular number comes out to be 0.072. Okay, that particular number is 0.072. Now this is your profit margin. Okay. Now the second calculation, which will end up multiplying this by this number, is the asset turnover. So if you go to your formula, the next calculation we want to get is asset turnover, which is sales divided by your total assets. So let's come down here. Let's go to Bartlett. Find your sales number, 3074. And we want to divide that number by our total assets. Now you're going to have to flip over to the back. This is the same sheet we used the other day. Flip over to the back. Okay. Find your total assets. Not current, not long-term, but total. 3597. Okay. Now, when you get that number, and I'm going to kind of work backwards here, okay, that number is going to end up being 0.85. And this is called your asset turnover. Now, let's just look at those two numbers a minute. Now, what this one means, if you leave it in decimal form, you can always put these numbers over $1, okay? This means for every $1 of sales, if you put it over $1, for every $1 of sales, we're generating about 7 cents in net income. okay, and that's okay. Okay, that's a fairly good number, even though it doesn't sound like much. Now the other one lets us know that if we put it over $1 or 1, it tells us for every $1 of assets, we're generating about 85 cents in sales. That's good. That means we're only spending about 15 cents in cost of goods sold. Okay, so both of these are good solid ratios. But the ratio that we're wanting to get is actually the return on assets, okay? And the return on assets, if you remember, I told you, let's just come up here, the top. Return on assets is actually your net income, okay, divided by your total assets. Now, we're taking the long way around, okay? This is the shortcut. I don't want you to be taking the shortcut formula. We're taking the long way around by splitting this up into 2 parts. So what I want you to do now is to multiply these 2 numbers, and we should come out with the same number that we would have if we went the long way, okay? Now, by multiplying these 2 numbers, leaving it in decimal form like this, what we come up with is 0.061, okay? So 0.061 is your return on assets, okay? Now, you can just play around with that. You can actually plug in numbers up here in this formula, and let's just check it and see if it comes out. Our net income, again, notice net income is this number, 221, divided by our total assets, which would be the bottom number here, 3597. And if you do this division, you should still come out with 0.061 or somewhere close to that. Okay, what that means is, again, you can always put these numbers over 1, which means $1. It means for every $1 of assets, we're generating about 6 cents in net income. Okay, 6 cents in net income. So it's another measure of your activity, your return, okay? So that's pretty good, okay? Now that was for Bartlett, so that's just doing the straight calculations. When you do your homework, I want you to see, I've given you the numbers already, income, sales, assets. I want you to do the profit margin times the asset turnover, okay? And that's going to give you your return on assets. And I want it for each of these calculations. So what you're going to have here for homework, you'll have 4 profit margins, you'll have 4 asset turnovers, and then when you multiply, you'll have 4 return on assets. I want to see your work on this, so show work, okay? And then I want you to take a look at those numbers and tell me, I want you to tell me this, which has the highest profit margin? Which of these 4 divisions? Because you're looking at Disney, you're looking at the media, you're looking at their parks, you're looking at the studios and the products that they sell. If we're evaluating the managers in those divisions, which one has the highest profit margin? Which one's more profitable? Which has the highest asset turnover? Meaning using their assets more efficiently, okay? So that's this measure. So which one of those is the highest? And then the third question is which has the higher return on assets? So when you do the multiplication of these 2 numbers, which has the highest return? Okay, so you should have 12 ratios, and you can leave them in decimal form, and then answer these 3 questions for me, okay? Now let's come back to number 2, because we have a little twist on this one. It's turned around just a little bit, so let's take a look at it, and it doesn't pertain to, it does not pertain to Bartlett, it pertains to Dell and Home Depot. Now, Dell and Home Depot both, let's read through this, have the same asset turnover. Okay, now you remember what we're looking at is profit margin times your asset turnover equals your return on assets. So that means that the asset turnover for both Dell and Home Depot are the same, and it happens to be 1.6. So both of these, 1.6, okay, for Dell and 1.6 for Home Depot. So just looking at those, you wouldn't know which one's more efficient. And again, if we're evaluating managers, we want to see which one has the higher profit margin, okay, being more profitable, which one overall is using their assets to generate a higher net income, which is return on assets. So what we want to do is we want to calculate, in this case, we're going to be able to calculate the profit margin because we know that the return on assets for Dell, the bottom line here, 4.3, let's put it in a decimal point, 0.043. Move your decimal 2 places to the left here, put a 0. Leave the 1.6, it's already in decimal form. That means that for every $1 of assets, they're generating $1.60 in sales. Okay. This one, 4.3, is means that for every $1 of assets, they're generating about 4 cents in net income. Okay, so remember your formulas. Go back to the top if you've forgotten what we're talking about. Okay, for your return on assets for your Home Depot, it's a little higher. It's 6.5. So let's change that to a decimal. Move it 2 places to the left and put a 0, 0.065. Now, that would look like Home Depot has a higher return on assets, although they're both the same on efficiency here. Let's see which one's more profitable, okay? Because your profit margin, which is what we want to calculate, we don't know what it is, so I'm going to put a question mark there. So let's look at this first formula. Here's Dell. Now, remember your math. If you're looking for the variable, the unknown there, what you want to do is to clear this side so that it stands alone. That means you want to divide both sides by 1.6. Okay. This washes out, the 1.6 washes out so that you have 0.043 divided by 1.6. Now, if you put that in your calculator, what that means is you're going to be getting 0.027. I believe is the number. Where's my number? 0.027. Okay, that's your profit margin. If you change it to a decimal, move your decimal place 2 places to the right and put a percentage, that's 2.7%. But you have to have it in decimal form to be able to do your calculations. So what that means is for every $1, if you go back and look at your formula, let's go back up here to see what it means. Here's your profit margin. For every $1 of sales, what we're generating here in net income is about close to 3 cents. Okay, so let's see if Home Depot is a little bit more profitable. And again, to do your calculation, you want to keep the unknown on the same side by itself. So you want to divide both sides by 1.6. That was already in decimal form. This side washes out. So your calculation, if you put this in your calculator, you're going to come out with 0.04, okay? 0.04. That's your profit margin. That means that for every $1 of sales in this case, you're generating 4 cents in net income. That's higher than Dell, so Home Depot has a higher profit margin. You could move this 2 places to the right, and that would be 4%, and that's your profit margin. So if I ask you which one had the higher, the Home Depot does, okay? Let's evaluate it again, though, okay? You have 4% here as profit margin. You had 0.65, so both of these are higher on your inside ratios. However, they both had the same turnover, 1.6, remember? So overall, Home Depot has the stronger ratio analysis, and you know, their managers should be commended for that. Okay. Now that was just a little twist. Again, use your normal procedure like I told you for your homework down here. Okay. Use this formula, do the multiplication, show all work, answer these questions. Highest profit margin, highest asset turnover, highest return on assets. Okay, let's just come back to your PowerPoints. You can slide through all this. There's the homework. All the calculations that I just did are prior to that, so you can go back through and see what we did and the analysis and the breakdown. Okay, so prepare that homework, and my husband should be coming over there on Monday, so have it ready by Monday. Have a good weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.